Welcome, guys, to Friday Night Light. I'm your host, Keenan Jean, Haitian Sensation, and I'm here to tell you that diamond makes pressure, or pressure makes diamonds. Before I would continue, you guys subscribe, share, like, and you guys go crazy in the comments. Without ado, you guys probably already know who this guy is. He's a hood legend, one of the guys I kind of look up to when it comes to sport, reporting sport, anything in the sport world, coming to athletes, coaches. Your guy, Larry Bluestein. Welcome, Larry Bluestein. How are you doing?
Good, Keenan. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate that.
Yes. Before I start, I want to say thank you for reporting me when I was nothing. I was a diamond in the rough, man. You guys, I remember my first camp. Larry came over and he said I had potential. He could have been lying, or he could have just been trying to inspire me. But for the most part,
You're funny.
It definitely went a long way. I like his work, love his work actually. And he's actually helped a couple of my former teammates get to the next college level. So man, without a doubt, I promise you, forever your debt. And I told myself one day I gotta, return the favor.
Appreciate that. That's
You know what I
kind
mean?
of you. But yeah, I've been doing this a long while. And as you know, I'm still doing it now. And,
Yeah.
this is, we just got off of spring and now we're heading into the summer, which is usually my busiest time because I go around the state and go to all the camps for all the colleges and, and do that. And now the NCAA's put restrictions where you can only do it in June. You used to be able to have some in June and July, but now the NCAA won't let its member schools, like the bigger schools like Florida, Florida State, and then UCF and FAU and FIU. They can only do these during June. So they kind of, it's like a crash course. And then the month of July, we still stay busy because now, unlike when you played, now there's a lot more colleges.
I
You have a
see
lot
that.
of the NAIA schools like Florida Memorial and St. Thomas and Kaiser. And so during the months of July, they usually have camps and they usually have 7-on-7s, which keeps me busy. And you got to figure that even though they're NAIA schools, they still attract a really good group of teams and players because those guys don't want to sit home the whole month of July. So they come over there and yeah, that's what the off season is usually a lot more busier for me, a lot more active because things are not planned out. I got to kind of plan them myself. I got to
Yeah.
go to all the events, the 7-on-7s and I like it, but it's just really tough to because now I do this entire state and
Mhm.
I've done that for a while, but and I enjoy it because I get to see a lot of kids. But during the month of June and really, other than spring, which is kind of dictated for you because I do more. This my game plan has been this. I get to see a lot of the outside kids, Jacksonville, Tallahassee, those areas, through the months of June and July
Yeah.
because there's no other place in the country that you want to be in the fall than here in South Florida because
South Florida's the best.
yeah, well, because you're never going to find those matchups like Chaminade and Heritage and Central. I mean, there's a few schools around the state, but but to me, that's why I devote the 2 months out of the year seeing all those kids because if you're going to evaluate them and you're going to write on them, you got to see them. You got to be there. There's a lot of people in this industry. See, I learned when I was a long time ago that we didn't have cell phones and we didn't have all that, the stuff that they have today, the computer. So that's how I learned. And
Hmm.
that's how I still, even though I have all, the computer and websites and all that, I still go. There's nothing about nothing better than was if a coach asks you about a kid that you're standing 5 or 6 feet away from.
Yeah.
Coaches used to call me up and ask me, "Hey, can the kid catch or can he run?" Now they know all about that. Now their main questions when they talk to me are about character
Okay.
because as well as I do, either way, good or bad, character and not being a leader can work for you or against you,
Mhm.
and that's what they want. Whenever I like Jimbo Fisher or anybody like that would call me, or and ask me, you know, what about this kid? I mean, I know he can catch, or I know he can tackle, but I mean, is he a good teammate? I mean,
Yeah, so, so
is he going to be a cancer in the locker room? I mean, because as well as I do, I mean, they're spending, what, 60, $70,000 a year on these guys.
mhm.
So they don't want them to turn out to be somebody who's detrimental to the program. And sometimes, I mean, you could usually tell,
Yeah.
and you look at Teddy Bridgewater in his case, uh, you know, uh, Teddy and I mean, I used to coach Teddy in baseball,
Mhm.
and great baseball. I mean, one of the best athletes you ever find. I mean, and a great dude. He's back at Northwestern now, helping out with
Helping out.
Northwestern.
Yeah,
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 because type of guy. A buddy of mine who works for the New Orleans Saints, when Teddy was with the New Orleans Saints, he told me he used to ride his bike there on Friday nights to the Superdome and watch high school football.
yeah.
So yeah, you can't teach that stuff. So I
You
kind
can't.
of knew he had character,
Yeah.
and he great upbringing. His mom Rose is really, really good people. So, but then you have the other side. You have the other, the kids who, they run a 4.40, or they have 160 tackles, but they're detrimental. They're always getting in trouble. They're hanging with the wrong people,
Yeah.
and colleges need to know that. So recruiting has come down to a lot more than the X's and O's. And I've adjusted, and I've bent over the years, and like people say, wow, you've been around high schools. I said, I never left, I mean, I never left. I got right out of high school, and I've been there ever since. So it's, yeah. As long as you keep up with the changes, Keenan, I mean, a lot of these kids, I'm probably old enough to be their grandfather, but they don't. I mean, they'll text me or they'll call me and tell me, hey, I just went to here, I went to there, and you figure, wow, because when you look at it, they're not going to communicate with an OG like that on the
They,
outside,
they
but
not.
they feel comfortable enough with me that like a lot of kids call me, oh, you're such a young soul, and you're a guy that understands you, what we know, and yeah, I enjoy that,
And
that's the best part.
I like that you touched on that because that's one thing that goes a long way, especially with college coaches, but just in general with people who come and look at different athletes. It's one thing to obviously we know they're there to obviously get stats or do a report on them, but to actually get that one-on-one relationship, that's actually what go a long way. You're kind of sort of like the whole recruiting agent, if you want to say, you know what I'm saying? Is one thing to just come out there and just obviously write some notes down, but you see, I noticed that you say these people call you and ask about the kids and ask about their character. Only reason they would ask those type of questions is obviously they know you're there and you're getting that one-on-one raw, you
Right.
actually see them and stuff like that. And that's what's up.
Yeah.
So for the people out there, how about you introduce yourself? Because I know there's some people who know about you. There's a lot of people who know about you, but for the ones that don't know about you.
Well, my name is Larry Bluestein. I work for so many different outlets throughout the years. From radio, I currently still do a radio show every Monday on WQAM radio in Miami, which is, when you think about it, and somebody reminded me about it last week. Uh, to have a high school show in a large market like South Florida and Miami
Mm-hmm.
is not the norm. Most, and that's why, like, all the program directors that have come down to WQAM, we've had a lot of them. Well, they've come from Pittsburgh and Dallas and New York, and this isn't the norm.
Mm-hmm.
And so they all of a sudden, I think they kind of watch what I do and watch the response and how many. I mean, because I have a lot of college coaches on, and they just figure, wow, it's part of the landscape, and let's leave him on for 2 hours, because anybody we would stick on, we'd never get the ratings, or we would never get the interest. So I've done that, and I started out when I was in high school. I played baseball, and I always hung around football. My dad was a big football fanatic, and he had Miami Dolphins tickets from the beginning back in the '60s, and they used to go to the Hurricane games, and my sister would go, and it's a big sports family. So I kind of generally, that's how I grew up, in a sports family. And my mom even, um, she's Dutch. She was Dutch, and she started watching baseball and watching tennis and got into football. So, yeah, I come from that type of family where, you used to wake up in the morning and you take the newspaper and put all of it on the floor except for the sports section, and there you reading all the box scores, and that's how I started. And a buddy of mine who played, and I thought he was really good, but he was getting no interest, and back then, interest isn't like it is now. We didn't have college coaches come out during the spring. So one time I took, we don't have, back in the day, they didn't have the VCRs or anything like that. They had these big reel to reel tapes, I mean, they're huge. And I got a highlight film of my buddy, and it cost me like $14 to send it, which probably today is like 60.
Yeah.
But and I sent it off to University of Tennessee at Martin, and about, I'd say, a month went by, and his mother called my mom, and she says, "I don't know what your son did, but we got an opportunity to get a scholarship." So that was it. I started doing that, and I mean, and I figured, you just got to be. The thing is you find out during the year, because when I started, there was like nobody. We had a couple of the newspapers like Miami News, Miami Herald, Fort Lauderdale people. They had maybe two or three national people at the time, but I would go to a game, and I basically, other than the writer from the Herald, I'd be the only one, and they didn't really understand what my concept was. Today, you could go to a game and get 50 or 60 people, so it's changed. But the thing that has made me the way I am today is I've never changed.
Yeah,
I've always done
you
everything. I
haven't.
don't I don't take the shortcuts, you see.
Yeah,
But most of these people will sit home on a Friday night and evaluate from a stream, from either a stream or with somebody else, like if you go to Northwestern, there's somebody who's always filming the game. I can't do that. I mean, and I never tried. And, back in my day, we we had to use payphones, and I would go around with big bag of change because that's the only way you could call kids. And
yeah,
you'd have to call them up and ask them, hey, are you going to what school you're going to go to? Because back then you only could take 5 visits. I mean, and the NCAA would watch. I mean, back in the 70s and the 80s, that's all they let you do is take 5 visits. And if you grew up in Florida, in order to go to a Florida school like FSU or Florida or Bethune or Florida A&M, you'd have to take a Florida test. So, in addition to the SAT, which was something you took to go out, you had to take a Florida test. And that's the only way you could go to a state school. And if you signed with, let's say, Florida, there's that early signing period,
mm-hmm.
you could get out of it, but
Yeah,
you couldn't play for another state school. Like you couldn't play for Miami or FSU. If you sign with Florida, the only way you'll be able to do that. So that's how I started. And like I said, I've done national. I did national for 17 years, where I go everywhere, California, and I've seen some of the really like classic matchups, ever. I mean, like in Ohio when they have Massillon and
you gotta
Canton
take me. You gotta
McKinley.
take me on one of those trips. You got.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm not doing the national ones anymore, but you still see in this state, when a lot of the, Northwestern Central is a classic example.
Yeah,
When
that's.
I was growing up, Northwestern Central weren't that good. I
Mhm.
mean, it was Carl Gables was really, really good, and Miami Edison, and
I mean,
Norland.
yeah.
Yeah, those were the good teams back in the '70s. And the state of Florida, or especially South Florida, started getting good in the like the middle '80s to the late '80s, and then and then a lot of the team. But because you got to remember, there was limited schools. You know,
Mm-hmm.
when I went to school, there was no Southridge or American or Hialeah. Miami Lakes just got built, and there were none of those outlying Braddocks or any of those. There were none of those. So everybody lived here. They went consolidated, and they had to go. I mean, I think like there was a Columbus, and there was a South Dade, there was a Palmetto down south. Key West, obviously, but not a lot of schools. Booker T. Washington was a middle school, and most of the kids that lived in Overtown at the time went to Miami Beach or Miami High.
Yeah.
Like Roscoe Parrish and Andre Johnson. When they were in school, the Booker T wasn't in existence. And but yeah, so that's what I've done. And I try. What I do is I promote kids, and I have an opportunity via my social media. In all my social media accounts now, it's well over 100,000. So what I do is if I put a kid's name out, colleges who follow me are going to see it, and they're going to. And I never just put a kid's name out. I always tag a film with.
Mm-hmm.
So they look at it and they'll see, okay, hey, this kid can play. And what they do is then they'll contact the coach or whatever it is. And I've been fortunate, a lot of the college coaches, a lot of the parents, like the other night, like yourself, one of the mothers who I've covered four of her kids, and the
Mm-hmm.
oldest one's I think 26 now or 27, and the youngest one is a junior in high school. And she said to me, "What you do is amazing because nobody would do this. Everybody always has their hand out and always wanting to, you know, uh, get paid for everything they
Yeah.
do." And I've been fortunate that I worked. As in the newspaper world, my family owned a newspaper, and I was an editor. I never really did much sports, I
Mm-hmm.
everything but I would talk, I would hang out with mayors and police chiefs and all that, and then I would make enough time to be able to go to these camps and go to these combines and make games, and that's how I was very fortunate, and that's why I tell people it's hard to make a living, just doing recruiting. It really is, because especially if you have a family and all that stuff, it's just really tough. So you
Mm-hmm.
got to get a job on the side that kind of like fits what else you do. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Tough
it's
out there.
it's not the you know what it's not the glamour everybody thinks it is, but because people say, "Oh, look it, man, I'd love to do what you do." Yeah, well, to a point, you know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? It's
Mm-hmm.
but if you have to follow me around for 24 hours, you go, "Oh, maybe not."
So one thing I'd like to get your point of view on this transfer portal thing and this NIL thing. These two topics has been one of the most talked about since I would probably say once Dion got to Colorado. What's your take on it?
Well, it actually started I mean, I think Miami could be blamed for the transfer portal,
Transfer
because
portal? Yeah.
they're the ones that started. With Manny Diaz started his transfer portal and getting kids out of there, and getting the kid Rambo, the receiver, and getting the guy from Buffalo who's with
Oh
the
yeah.
Vikings now, the receiver. What do I think of it? It's knifed into recruiting pretty bad. I mean, now those borderline kids are getting shipped down to the Division 2, Division 3 NAIA. There's a lot of kids at those levels that could probably play,
Yeah.
at a Division 1. But you look at the transfer portal, there's a trillion kids in there, and not everybody needs all those kids. So
Yeah.
to me, and I try to tell, because they think, oh, if I go in there, I'm going to get picked up. But that's not always the deal. You never throw away a scholarship. So even if you have to bite your tongue till it bleeds, you stay there. You got to stay there, because either that or you're going to have to foot your own bill. You're going to have to pay for yourself. So the transfer portal is like a double-edged sword.
It is.
It can work in your advantage, and then obviously it works in your disadvantage. So with Dion, he's played this like a poker game. He got rid of all his cards except for the ace,
Yeah.
his
It did.
son and a couple other people, and now he's trying to fill a roster like that. And to me, the average person doesn't understand, but every time he loses or gains a kid, they got to go through the financial things. And like I called a buddy of mine and I said, you know what, the busiest person at the University of Colorado are the people who are the registrars and the people who figure out scholarship money. I mean, because they have to, they have their budgets. And and those are the people who are the busiest, because if a kid goes out, then they've got to earmark that money for somebody else. And
Yeah.
um, and you look at what Mario Cristobal has done, hasn't done it as dynamically, but it's funny because I was on a podcast this afternoon, and we were talking about that very thing, looking back at 2022, June of 2022, as opposed to today, and Miami's roster is dramatically changed. I mean, they've got, you know, a lot of really key guys on. So that's what I'm saying. Things can change for the better, but then it could change for the worse. You could lose a lot of kids, when you really need them. And the NIL deal, my own, and I've always been on the side of athletes being paid. I really have. I think that it's not fair for them, to come to school. And there's a lot of kids that are, not as privileged as others. And, for some of these kids, they don't get the college for them, it turns out to be just staying in your dorm or your apartment because they don't have any money to go out, for a dinner or, take a date out or any of that because they just don't have it and their families can't afford, So I've always been on board about that. But the thing is I think that the NCAA kind of missed the boat. They try to control everything else like visits and when college could see kids. But to me, to have like a Bryce Young making $2.2 million before I ever snapped the ball at college. And to me, that's got to be a problem because how do you discipline somebody when they got almost as much money as you do? And but that's my only drawback. I think that what they need to do is the NIL deals should kick in after a year. Let these kids come to school and let them go without the NIL deal for the first year, and let's see how that works out because they're just. I mean, I think you're just asking for trouble because let's look at your case. If you were a kid coming out of high school and you had $1.5 million in the bank, and one, or one night or one morning, you say, "Oh man, I don't, I know I got a test, but I'm not going to get up."
Yeah.
So see, that's the thing I'm saying. It gives it a lack of discipline. I mean, I'm not against it, and I don't ever, and I always preface that by saying, I think it's important, but there's got to be regulations. There's got to be some type of, guidelines to it, and there isn't, and that way, I mean, pretty soon, if they keep letting this go, you're going to get some unbelievable senior in high school, and they're gonna be making $6 million before I ever walk into your damn school. And
true, and it doesn't make sense. It
makes no sense. And I mean, to me, having money to go out on a date or whatever, go out with the guys for a night or something like that, a couple of nights, is one thing, but having $6 million in the bank is another. And and I'm just saying, there's got to be some guidelines put on because I mean, you could do it fair, I mean, because you can't tell. You see, the NCAA has made it where they have nothing to do with it, which means the colleges can have nothing to do with it. So it's out of the college's hands. The NIL deals are set up by somebody outside the school.
True.
So the colleges have no say so in it. So if you ask whoever, Napier at Florida about, hey, what about that guy making? He doesn't know. It's not coming from this, it's not coming from the money out of the school. It's not going to enhance them books and tuition and stuff like that anyway. So they really they can't comment on it because they have nothing to do with it. See, and that's why there's a problem because it's sort of like these kids are independent contractors. They're playing for you, but you know what? You have back in the day, okay, well, that guy's, he needs to be here. Most of these kids don't now. And they're setting, if you have a business, like they've done down here, and I think it was, what's his name? De'Aaron King. He actually was the first guy, I think, in the NCAA to have an NIL deal because he signed up with, I think, some local club where all he had to do was show up, and sign autographs or be there. And they were paying him $1,000 just for a couple of hours. And he got a bunch of gigs like that. And then everybody said, wait a minute. we want to do
Want
that
to do that?
too. And then they raise the bar, and now the bar is so high you can't see it.
It's
So
really there's really no. I can't even tell you. I see people getting deals from AC companies to
do
home.
everything.
Yeah, everything. Then anything that has a business name on it, you can do it at this point.
Yeah, and to you, if you're Joe, the business owner, you figure, oh well, I'll give the guy some money because what he's going to do is everybody knows him, so he's going to get my product out. You know, especially if you're like a sports bar or you're, you know that if you had like Tyler Van Dyke or any of these guys like Cam Kitchens, and you announce that they're going to show up at your restaurant, you know, tonight they'll be there from 8 to 10 or whatever it is, you're going to have a pretty good crowd. And so that means those people are going to come and spend lots of money and, you know, on food and drink and whatever. And so you can afford to give that athlete a grand or two. And that's what I'm saying. That's where it is now. I just think that it has to be regulated to the point where, you know, you can make certain amount. You know, there's got to be a standard, but until it is, this is wild, wild west.
So we're actually it's actually giving me a time left. So we got 10 minutes, about 10 minutes left.
All
Um,
right.
I'm glad that you brought up Cam Kitchens. Are there any players that you see, you know, are upcoming in high school and college that you can see, you know, potentially can, you know, go to the league or ended up in the draft?
Well, in South Florida, Reuben Bain, here's a kid that came out of Miami Central,
Mm-hmm.
and he got to the point where during the spring football game, he had 3 sacks, and they had to go sit his butt on the thing because he was disrupting the scrimmage. Guys like him, they, you know, in Miami's case, they've, you know, as far as South Florida is concerned, you get a lot of really good football players. Brandon Innes, who went to Ohio State from
Mm-hmm.
American Heritage. In this group coming up now, you have Stacey Gage and Jordan Lyle, 2 running backs at St. Thomas Aquinas that are top 10 in the state. Those type of guys. I had a chance to go watch Central scrimmage on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that's the most talented roster I've ever seen in a high school. I
Listen,
mean,
they're stacked.
it's crazy. Well, not only that, I walked away thinking that their second teamers would probably be a top 10 team because I mean they got guys. I mean their quarterback situation. They
Mm-hmm.
went to Texas and got one. They went to California and got the other. And their third string kid who came from Killian would start on 90% of the schools in South Florida. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's gotten to that point, and you know it's kind of tough because Roland Smith had so much success, and then you go, oh, when he leaves, it's good. Coach Joseph is probably more stern than he is. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, he's a but that's the thing. If you're a disciplined team, and that's why Booker T is starting to turn things around because Ice Harris, and I've been doing this a long time. He's top 5 coach that I've ever covered because he's just such an impact guy. You know, good dude, but at the same time, he'll get in your face a little bit. And I think these kids know because, you know, a lot of them come in very undisciplined, but he kind of like sets a bar where it needs to
I
be and
heard
they learn fast or they're out.
I heard Max went over there as well. He left.
Yeah.
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 Max
I
went
saw
over there.
Max last week. I went over to watch him practice, and
What about
Max Edwards he's a good
Miami
guy.
Northwestern?
I was there on Saturday. Talking with the CEO, Teddy Bridgewater. He's out there with him taking notes because he and Michael Lee Harris are real close.
Yeah.
And Cam actually came out and talked to the kids because that's a great idea. Because remember, he was just there 3 years ago.
He
So
was.
it's kind of showing these kids, look, he's one of the top safeties in the country. And probably in a year or so will be a first round draft.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but it's good like that. And I think a lot of these kids need, you know, good role models. They, you know, a lot of them come from tough, you know, environments and you know, and what I like is a lot of these kids get out of that environment, have seen a lot of stuff, you know, I mean, and you know, I used to talk to like Marcus Forston and all them, and he would tell me he lay in bed at night and hear gunshots all night.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, what a way to grow up, you know, I mean, but they come out of that, they learn from that, you know, they learn from a lot. The generation now and the younger kids see um, a lot of bad stuff, and they break that that bad thing that's probably gone on for generations in their family, like domestic stuff and like that. It's not just blacks, whites, blacks, it's Hispanics, it's everybody. And that's what I'm saying. A lot of these kids of today are hanging with different people, more people who have a better intention for life, and they break that mold. And they're not that person, that if they hung out all the time, and that's great.
I'm glad you said that. I stopped by Miami Edison the other day. Went to go look, tried to talk to the kids, and actually, Nathaniel, Ray Ray, yeah, Ray Ray's another diamond in the rough. I talked to,
Great family, great
yeah,
family.
And he was telling me how obviously he's at UM, it's right there, but he said he loved the campus life, loved the coaches. One thing about the coaches that they didn't switch over, obviously while they're trying to recruit you, they're one way, and sometimes when you get there, they're
Yeah.
another person. But he says when he got there, everybody stayed the same. And I seen him, actually trying to help out the receivers with routes and stuff like that. So that was a good
Yeah.
see, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, and he comes from a good family. I mean, they were Edison graduates, but like his uncle is, Flex Joseph's dad. That's their cousins, the running back at FIU, and they ran the Northside Optimist program for all those years. And that's the one thing. I'm doing this for any length of time. You get a chance to meet these families, like the Holt family who ran the Northwest boys track program and the girls, which is just amazing. But yeah, that's the one thing that I've always, I mean, people go, oh man, why do you go to Northwestern? Because that's where I grew up. I
Yeah,
mean, I'm
man.
not, that's just me. I don't think twice. I know. I mean, you could go to North Miami Beach or North Miami and have as much danger. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
a,
yeah.
I'm a pioneer at heart, but
Shout out
things
to
have changed. Well, I I did find out that 2 years ago, because I go to there's a parade every year in North Miami on Thanksgiving,
yeah.
and my friend who's like on the council, who's Haitian, he said, "Do you realize that North Miami is the second most populated Haitian community in the world next to Port-au-Prince?" And I never knew
I
that.
didn't even know that as well too.
I never knew that. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, you know, but that's amazing.
It
And,
is.
I mean, because if you look at their city council and their mayor, they're all Haitian. So and I mean, it's to me, there's no place like South Florida. Look at all the Jamaicans, Haitians, Dominicans. We have Cubans, we have everybody, and it's a melting pot. And that's why, and the Jamaicans, and the
Mm-hmm.
food's good.
Yeah. So
I know.
so you know.
I know.
That's what's up. I want to ask a personal question before I go. What are some one of the funniest moments you've had since you've done all the recruiting? I know you met a bunch of coaches, a bunch of players, been to all type of games. What's one of the funniest moments you had since?
Well, I sat in, I don't want to bring up a name, but I sat in a living room, and one of the fathers invited me over. He was having pretty prestigious coach Urban Meyer over at the time,
Mhm.
and Urban walked into the house. Speaking of food, and the mom, who's Hispanic, who's from Dominican Republic, said, "Listen, if you're going to talk to my son, you're going to eat my food." And Urban Meyer was just, I mean, he looked shocked.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, but that's, as well as I do, the mothers and the grandmothers in South Florida, they're the backbone of
yeah.
these families.
They are.
They are. I
Yeah.
mean, they are. Like my friend said, you could commit a big time crime on Saturday night, but your butt better be in church on Sunday morning.
Sunday.
You know?
That sounds like something my grandma would say, my mother would say.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Whenever you get a chance, I'm gonna give you some Haitian food, man. I got you. I got
Okay, yeah, yeah,
you.
yeah,
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 with
yeah.
some rice, some zico, all that.
Like it, like it.
Got
I
you.
go to Captain Creole, so
I
yeah, believe me.
believe Bluestein. I believe, man.
Yeah, I mean, you don't
Oh,
live down here for that long and not
and
sample some of the great foods, and
mhm.
yeah, the oxtails and brown gravy and all
Okay, so
that. Yeah,
you know your little recipe,
yeah, I know.
menu. Man, it was a pleasure, an honor to have you. Down the line, obviously, I know you're busy, so hopefully one day I can bring you into the studio.
Okay.
yeah, we get a more presence. But yeah, man. Is there anything you'd like to say to the fans out there?
Well, I just say thank you very much for supporting your kids, and to the parents listening, thanks for what you do for getting your kids, and not using the local parks as a babysitter, but actually going out and supporting them. And